It's a big lie that it was voted in 51-49. They could have said anything because nobody was there babysitting the ballots.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We got a voicemail from a Boeing worker. Let's play this, and then if we don't get any other Boeing calls, we will go ahead and wrap up. Let's play this clip from a Boeing worker.
Hi, yes, I'm a Boeing machinist, and I'm watching the Boeing machinists vote down another tentative agreement. That's the title of your show here. And I don't know the host's name, but he was just referring to our last contract back in 2014 and how we voted to let our pension go. In other words, we voted that contract in with the threat of Boeing pulling out of the state and the machinists being responsible for the demise of the entire state economy. We voted that down before Christmas, and they pulled some really, really dirty stuff. And all of a sudden there was another vote before anybody was back from Christmas vacation. But that's besides the point that I want to call and make. This saying that we voted in the new contract that did away with our pension, I hear it all the time. We voted it in 51-49. That is complete gaslighting, and it's been going on from the beginning. But the fact is that nobody was there to babysit those ballots, or when those ballots were counted, proper procedures were not followed. The voting areas were extremely understaffed to the point where people that were there to vote because they happened to know about it and were back to work because it was a Friday, and they probably didn't have any vacation time to take the full 2 weeks off. A lot of them stood in line for hours and couldn't even vote because they had to go ahead and punch in to work. It was a sham. But bottom line, we did not vote that contract in. We did not vote that contract in. The IAM at the international level had a carrot so big and fat and sweet, dangled in front of them by Boeing to get this contract through, and they did everything necessary, including illegal actions, to put that contract through, quote unquote. That contract was not voted in by the employees. It's a big lie that it was voted in 51-49. They could have said anything because nobody was there babysitting the ballots. Of course they're going to make it close because we all voted it down very few weeks prior. Anyway, it's just so frustrating to hear the gaslighting. And another big one is that we get 2 weeks off for Christmas. No, we don't. We get 7 days. That's not 2 weeks. That is 3 days shy of 2 weeks. And if you don't have the vacation time, which chances are, if you haven't been there for more than 10 years, you don't, then you don't get 2 weeks. You get 7 days, which is why some of those people were back on January 3rd of 2014 to vote that contract down again.
Appreciate the voicemail. I don't know about the, I don't know anything about the ballot issue. I know that there was some frustration about, people not being back from, Christmas, right? It's a little bit of a different argument than actual ballot counting concerns. That's kind of more closer to gerrymandering or something, which is not to say that it's legitimate, but it's definitely, I can totally understand the frustration. And when I say, and also I think the caller understood this, but when I say, that the contract was voted in that didn't include the pension, I'm only saying that as a matter of fact, not as and that's why they should accept a new tentative agreement without a pension. I'm obviously very pro pension and will continue to support the machinists as long as they stay out on strike, and wishing them the best and hoping that would love for them to be able to get their pension back. So we'll see how they vote on the tentative agreement on Monday. But definitely understand the frustration with, some of the gaslighting that I'm sure she's seeing in the local media, and the attempts to make, the workers seem like the greedy ones when you have these executives who are at the head of a really endangered company taking, tens of millions of dollars in raises, spending billions on stock buybacks and shareholder dividends and stuff like that. Completely misplaced priorities. And yet, when workers want retirement security, we are greedy. When the people who when the people who build the planes and put their bodies at risk, when they say, when my body can no longer work, I want to be able to live comfortably, they're being greedy. It's just absolutely right to be frustrated, and we're frustrated right there with you. So appreciate the voicemail. If you'd like to leave a voicemail where she did, you can leave us a voicemail anytime, 844-899-TVLR. Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. We have a caller on the line from a 256 area code. I think I know who this is. 256 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Jacob. It's Joe.
Hey, Joe. It's good to hear from you.
Yeah, appreciate the show today. I just want to say that every time I see Chris Townsend, I tend to agree with everything he says. The discussion about the 401ks, and if you think back 3 years ago, I was basically making the same complaints as he is. But the problem I see is my numbers is a little different than Chris's, and I haven't looked any time lately about where we was prior to 401ks and how many people actually had defined pension plans. I think he said 35% or something. I felt like that number was higher. Before corporate America got together and decided they was going to absolutely come after that, but the way they was going to do it was convince our members and just working people that 401k was a great thing. My numbers is probably less than his on how many people still have a real defined pension plan. I'm going to say it's in the 8% range. But Jacob, I sat and watched now when they brought in the consultants at our mill to tell us what a wonderful thing the 401k thing was. They drew a picture on the whiteboard of a three-legged stool, and it was described as, here's your defined pension plan, here's your Social Security, and here's your 401k. And if you participate in 20 years, you're all going to be millionaires. Well, everybody knows that ain't going to happen. Wouldn't nobody work but 20 years if that was going to be the case. But what I actually seen happen, and I had people mad at me because I talked against their 401k, and it was just really basic. Companies don't give you something for nothing. And the whole design of the plan is corporate America trying to destroy the defined pension plan, which they've done a really good job at. But I had folks mad at me for talking against it. I also watched people like myself with a high school education who never heard of a portfolio in their life except maybe some big-time model, and her portfolio. They'd sit around the break table once the 401k actually got its spot in our labor agreement and talk about their portfolio and how they was getting rich on it. Well, I'm just going to be honest. Lots of times I had to look in an employee's pay stub because he got cheated on some overtime or what have you. When I'd look, down at the bottom, it would say loans against your 401k. And almost every one I ever looked at had at least 2 loans against their 401k. So they basically wasn't doing nothing. And then my other big problem with it was the ones who was really hip about it and adamant about getting it was the ones on the top who was making the $35 an hour at the time. And the guys, and most of them was the older guys. Most of them kids was grown, pretty well set, in an hourly job. The guys on the bottom making $18 an hour had 2-3 kids at home, buying a house and paying for cars. They couldn't participate in a 401k to get the max out of it. I told you I tend to agree with almost everything Chris Townsend says, but just to blame it on corporate America, we got to take some responsibility for that ourselves, and that goes back to having leadership at the national level who would actually stand up and tell people what it was leading to. I want to think that most of them was a whole lot smarter than myself, but I never heard them made a peep, about this is going to be the downfall of your pension plans. Having said all that, that's just how I feel about it. It's a terrible program, was from the inception. We just couldn't get it in our heads what it was going to do, and that's our fault. One other thing while I got you, you mentioned the shutdown of the Georgetown, South Carolina mill by IP. And last week you mentioned the converting plant, box plant in Cleveland, Tennessee. I'm pretty sure, and I haven't been able to find out this week, but I'm pretty sure that Cleveland plant was organized. I had some friends that worked there because that's where I grew up, and I'm pretty sure that was an organized mill. The Georgetown, I'm just almost positive that's an organized mill. I probably got some acquaintances in there, but let me just tell you, in the last several months, IP has been negotiating with probably one of the biggest packaging corporations in Europe. I think it's home based in England to buy out their packaging corp. That finally come to fruition in the last month. So I really think in the IP corporation, you'll probably see some more plant closures in the U.S. Based on their merger or buyout. It wasn't a merger; it was a buyout. Same. It's just going full circle back. Every time back in the 80s, 90s, when there was a merger, their claim was, well, we're not going to have duplicate operations or duplicate jobs or what have you, and that's when they started making their massive cuts, But Jacob, I ain't gonna keep you, man. I just wanted to weigh in on the 401k thing and just say that we got to take some responsibility in that ourselves for not fighting back. And as far as ever getting it back, and we've always said once you give it up, you'll never get it back. And I'm still in that same camp. I hope that machinists get it back on the West Coast. My personal opinion is they'll eventually settle the contract without getting it back. Whenever, and this has just always been a problem for me, whenever you have a rejection of a contract, I've never understood for the life of me why you would make it public on what the percentage of the turn down was, because all that does is just let the company and the negotiators know that, hey, we got to sway, in their case, 64% turn down. They got to sway about another 15% to accept the next offer. I'd always just tell them, hey, we rejected it, and not never give them a number. But, hey, that's all I got, Jacob. I appreciate y'all.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the call, Joe. We actually did get a reply from the Steelworkers. We requested a comment from the Steelworkers International Union. It was reflected in our in the newsletter. We mentioned that the steelworkers said that yes, the Cleveland mill was union, and that they negotiated for severance packages and things like that. That workers in the non-union plants were not able to negotiate for. And the Georgetown plant was union. There was an interview in the Post and Courier with the union's president there. So. We got a caller from a 614 area code. 614 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How you doing, Jacob? I'm calling from Ohio.
Caller from
your program, and it's very good.
Appreciate it. Caller from Ohio. What's on your mind?
Well, to piggyback off what the gentleman was saying about, the pensions and just, the 401ks we got now. It's just a reduction of what the pensions used to be. A man or woman used to be able to work 20 or 30, 30 or 40 years, whatever the case may be, and get a good, decent pension and be able to live out the rest of his life in peace. But now the only pensions that are really strong is the police officers, the FOP.
Yeah. If
you live in a major city, which I live in Columbus. So they're making at least $100,000 a year salary of being a police officer. So that's
right.
FOP is the strongest union, in America, period, hands down. And my fear, well, it's not a fear, but I'm being cautioned by the fact, depending on who wins this presidency, the one that's not for unions, he's going to eliminate pensions, period. And if Boeing is going through contract negotiations, they can end up flipping like they did with the air traffic controllers back when Reagan was in office. And we as a country, we don't need that.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. It's concerning. I'm definitely watching with trepidation. Appreciate your call. Thank you.
Hey. All right, bye.
All right. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.
Which side are you on?